Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GroundNPound Podcast. The show, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And the PFL this week heads to Universal Studios, Orlando, Florida. And as always, the GroundNPound Podcast is going to break it all down for you. Starting off with the prelims, heading all the way to the main card. But before we get into the action, I got a man to introduce that wasn't here last week, but he's here with me most weeks. It's Carlos, ladies and gentlemen. How's it going, Carlos?
What's happening, brother?
Well, absolutely nothing, as usual, my friend. And are you ready to get right into the fights?
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. And this card has been absolutely chopped and diced, split and spliced, but the GroundNPound Podcast is going to get to it. And first off, we have Alvarez taking on Vilson Ndregjoni. I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that name. And I'm going to pass this one to Carlos first. Who do you have in this matchup, Carlos?
In this fight, I took Alves solely based on the fact that he's fought better opposition. He comes from shoot the box. He's aggressive. I think he's the harder hitter of the two. Vilson does look like he's pretty well rounded, but to be honest with you, it looks like he's kind of happy with controlling his opponent on the ground. It doesn't look like he's ever really looking for big finishes. And he kind of plays it safe on the feet. So, yep, Alves is my pick.
Yeah, 2 for Alves here for me as well. I actually found this one pretty difficult because Alves in his last fight, he did get taken down multiple times by a 15-0 Russian wrestler. And that kind of made me think, okay, that's the path to victory. And then I go watch tape on Vilson, and I see in his last fight, he repeatedly had nice entries and great wrestling. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the game plan coming in here and he is able to implement that. But I'm still going to take Alves. I just think that he's the faster striker on the feet, switches stances. He throws everything pretty hard, which I like. I think if he throws uppercuts and knees, I think that'll help him out in this particular matchup. He stands southpaw as well. He likes to blast kicks. And the thing I'd really noticed about Vilson is even though he fights over in UAE Warriors, he is fairly technical, but getting up there in age, 33 years old now. A lot to like in terms of his technical ability in the stand-up, but I just think Alves is going to be the faster striker and the better athlete here. He has youth on his side, and like Carlos mentioned as well, has fought the better competition up until this point. So 2 for Alves here, fairly safe parlay piece. Not necessarily the most confident that I've got, but I like Alves here in this matchup to kick off the card. And next up, we have Elora taking on Ndregjoni Avsaragova, and probably butchering Avsaragova, but move over Vanessa Demopoulos for those of you that watched our UFC breakdown, because Diana has probably taken my heart. Very beautiful, very nice in the stand-up, likes to keep things very, very technical, which I like. She has a really nice counter right hand. Multiple fights on tape I saw with her. She's able to land that right hand, and she lost in her last fight to Kish, which isn't necessarily the best look, but I think that she'll come back better than ever. Still fairly young, only 26. She's the slightly bigger girl in this matchup, and you wouldn't know it from watching tape, but according to the commentary team, she's actually a master of sport and freestyle wrestling, which surprises you because she tends to keep fights on the feet. She looks kind of like a kickboxer, so at any moment expect her to kind of break out her freestyle wrestling. And to be honest with you, when it comes to Denia, however it's said, she's kind of nonplussed to me. She's been fighting over on the regional scene in Mexico, 7-0, but don't let the record fool you. She likes to mostly grapple, but has fought low-level competition. She's only been around in MMA for about 3 years, only turned pro for the last 3 years, so doesn't have a ton of experience. And to be quite honest with you, I wasn't really impressed with her striking. I think that she's going to struggle to get this fight to the ground to implement her grappling. So I'm going to go with Diana, the Russian, to get it done here. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
Same, I went with Avsaragova. I'm assuming that's the name. Much like you described, on the feet, she's got a much higher level than Dana. It comes down to, can Dana get Diana to the ground? And doesn't mean when she gets her to the ground, she's going to have the one up. I don't even think she can get her to the ground. As you had mentioned, she does have some high-level wrestling as a base. She'll be able to defend the takedown and probably just beat her up on the feet. So let's go, Diana.
Yeah, absolutely. And she can change that last name to Benjamin whenever she wants. So definitely two for Diani there for the picks for the Ground and Pound podcast. And looking forward to seeing how she progresses in the PFL. And next up, we have Jena Bishop taking on Kana Watanabe. And I'm going to pass this one over to Carlos. So Grappler's Delight in this one. Who do you have in this one, Carlos?
I know Jena Bishop is a high-level BJJ. Watanabe has pretty high-level judo, so transitioning from standing to the ground, she's going to have to get some type of clinch to get her down. Most of her takedowns come from close quarters. I have to give the edge to Bishop on the ground. I think she has a few more finishes by submission than Watanabe. Doesn't mean that she's the best, but it means that she's always looking for the submission. Watanabe needs to be in the clinch to get that takedown. I have seen Bishop. She can get in deep on the hips based on masking it behind some strikes. So that's another one up for her to get to the ground and keep control. Bishop is more relaxed and more fluid on the feet and with her movements. And she's very aggressive, kind of like a little choppy in the stand-up. Like, her movements are a little fast, but she's fast. She comes forward, and I think she takes it over Watanabe.
Okay, a little bit of dissension.
Watanabe.
Watanabe. I'm actually going to pick Watanabe in this matchup. Judo practitioner, and I actually think that she's got a little bit better stand-up. I don't really necessarily trust Jena Bishop's stand-up, as Carlos mentioned, very high-level BJJ practitioner, so I do think she's going to be more live off of her back, but Watanabe, no slouch on the ground. I like the fact that she's able to jump and take people's back. She obviously has that judoka background to get fights to the ground, and I think that the real way that this fight's going to play out, at least in my mind, is if Bishop tries to go for takedowns, she needs that body lock takedown, and if she goes for that body lock, I think Watanabe's going to be able to use her judo to throw her and kind of get on top of her and maybe sit in half guard, land some ground and pound. I think Watanabe, out of the two, I think she tends to keep striking a little bit more technical. Not that either of these two ladies have great striking. I just think that Watanabe just fights a little bit more behind the jab. Bishop tends to just kind of throw wild and fake level changes and come over the top with sloppy right hands. So I'm going to go with the younger Watanabe here. I haven't necessarily seen a whole lot from Jena Bishop, but it does have to be mentioned. Her last two losses did come to Dakota Ditcheva, who's arguably the best female, I would say, in the PFL, but she's now not in the PFL, and Talia Santos, who was going to be on this card but had to pull out, but she was probably arguably the favorite to win this whole contest. So two losses in the PFL, but are to high-level competition. But at the age of 39, it's kind of hard to trust her. So I'm going to go with Watanabe here. Maybe a split decision we might be looking at. But I'm looking forward to seeing how these two ladies handle themselves on the ground, as we've got two different grappling styles coming up against each other in the PFL this week. And next up, we have Matheus Mattos taking on Jake Hadley, and familiar name for UFC fans. Jake Hadley, I'm not sure if he was cut from the UFC, but obviously now over in PFL, so be interesting to see how he does here making his debut. And I actually think he's got a pretty tough opponent over here in Mattos, and I'm actually going to be picking Mattos in this one. I'm kind of surprised he's the underdog, only because of the fact that he has only really lost to three high-level Russian wrestlers, which I've noticed on his record. So his three losses have all come to a combined record of 49-7. That's the combined record of all of the Russians here. And one of those losses is actually to Piotr Jan, who people are obviously familiar with in the UFC. So not necessarily bad level of competition to lose to. And Jake Hadley has kind of underwhelmed in the UFC, and he has a lot of volume on the feet. He can mix in grappling, but he kind of lacks the ability to get the respect from his opponents with his one-shot power. He doesn't really have a whole lot of that, and Mattos definitely has a whole lot of that. He has a lot of power, very physically strong, very physically muscular. I think he's going to have advantages in the grappling. Typical style Brazilian who likes to go for the finish, and I think he's just going to have the bigger moments in these fights with Hadley. I just could see him maybe getting the finish, or maybe just making the night pretty difficult for Hadley in this one. It's going to be a volume versus power game in this matchup, and I'm going to take the power and Mattos to get it done. And to be honest with you, Hadley, it's really hard for me to trust him with the last performance he had against Cameron Smotherman. Cameron Smotherman in the UFC came in on like 2-3 days notice and was able to beat a full full camp Jake Hadley. So no way I'm picking Hadley in this one. I'm going to go with Mattos. Carlos, who do you have in this one?
I actually took Mattos as well. The reason I did was pretty much the same thing as you. I think he's probably at the same level. Like, I don't think he has any big high level wrestling, but he does have a way to take it to the ground. I do think that his jiu-jitsu is pretty solid, at least his defense from what I saw against the wrestlers. He was able to defend ground and pound, get right back up, but they took him back down. I don't think he's going to have a problem with that with Hadley. I think when he gets Hadley down, that could be a big problem. Hadley is good. He's got good movement. He stays long, and he is pretty quick. But like I said, Mattos, I think he brings the power factor. He throws everything behind every shot, and I think he's just going to out physical Hadley. And might be a close fight, but I'm going with Mattos.
Yeah. I think a general misconception for the PFL I just wanted to add is I think people see people coming from the UFC coming into PFL as a favorite, and they automatically go, hey, I think this guy's going to win because he was in the UFC and the PFL's that step down. And it doesn't always work that way. I can think of a number of fighters off the top of my head that have come from the UFC, gone into the PFL and not had success. So definitely don't be fooled by the UFC caliber of Jake Hadley, because Mattos is definitely a gritty, powerful, and experienced fighter in his own right. So 2 for Mattos there in this last fight. And next up, we have Juliana Velasquez taking on, I'm going to butcher this name, ladies and gentlemen, Ekaterina Shakalova. Not too bad. And I'm actually kind of surprised by Shakalova here. Card got chopped and changed. She's now got a new opponent, so see how she handles it. But I noticed with her that she's fairly strong, very physically tough, very, very gritty. Her last fight against Aspen Ladd, she did lose that fight, but she did show a lot of toughness. She came out very aggressive in the first round. I think that might have cost her in terms of her cardio. Only 5'2", though, for the division. A little bit undersized in terms of height and reach, which I think could definitely play a factor here. And when I look into sort of her background, I noticed on her Instagram and social medias, it says that she's a 6-time grappling world champion. And I put that in brackets because I think that needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because in what? It doesn't necessarily specifically say. So she does have some grappling credentials. That's probably where she shines from what I could see on tape. Her stand-up is pretty much just her throwing hard strikes to try to get fights to the ground. She does have respectable wrestling to get fights to the ground. And in this matchup, she is going to be 11 years younger than Juliana. So definitely something to keep an eye out for. But I am going to go with Juliana here. Ultimately, I think judo practitioner. I think that she's going to be able to get the trips and the clinch here to get Shakalova to the ground. Shakalova does like to end up getting in the clinch, and I think that'll be a mistake here against Juliana. And even though she's 38 years old, she doesn't look like she's going to fall off a cliff anytime soon. She's got those credentialed grappling. She has got the height and reach advantage in this matchup. And the only real person that's been able to kind of have success against her recently is Liz Carmouche, who we'll see in the co-main event of this event, who did beat her 3 times back to back to back. So I guess Liz Carmouche is known as her daddy. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Juliana here. I think that her age and experience will be the big factor here. And Shakalova's going to make this a fight, though. I definitely think if the odds are kind of 3-1 or 4-1 for Shakalova, she might be worth a little sprinkle, because, at any point we could see a 38-year-old fighter kind of slow down. But I'm going to pick Juliana here. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
I also went with Velasquez just because of the same reasons you said. Very solid grappling. Stand-up wise, she can brutalize someone like Shakalova on the feet. The thing about Shakalova that makes her very difficult is the fact that she's kind of a wild card in this fight. She has a frantic pace. She swings wild, kind of sloppy at times. Her feet looks like she's kind of just, as you say, get into the clinch, but it looks like she kind of falls into the clinch sometimes. As she's overextending on some strikes, she ends up just falling right into the clinch. That's actually where she likes to be. I don't believe that's the place you want to be with Velasquez. But she is always pressuring. She's very offensive. She keeps a pace that keeps herself at risk of getting gassed and fatigued. But she's also one of those fighters that it's very hard to look very good against. So in the eyes of the judges, it could go her way as long as you're making your opponent back up and you're throwing and swinging wild. So
Yeah.
Velasquez, whatever she throws is going to have to be right on the money. She's going to have to make sure it counts, and whatever takedown, she's going to have to keep some top control because Shakalova can force good scrambles on the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And Shakalova was able to have a close fight with Aspen Ladd, but also as well, you look at that and think, well, she's an ex-UFC fighter, et cetera, et cetera. But Aspen Ladd's never really had a high ceiling. She's never necessarily been somebody that I've personally rated. So I don't know how much you necessarily look into a close fight with Aspen Ladd as a positive or a negative here. So I do think Shakalova would be live early because she does come out super aggressive, which might catch Juliana kind of napping a little bit. But ultimately, she always seems to slow down in fights from coming out too aggressively. So definitely one to watch. I think this will actually be a pretty decent fight overall. And two picks here, I believe, for Juliana. So. And I believe that brings us to our main card, and we have Kasumov taking on Justin Wetzell, and this one got pretty much all the way through. I think this one's always been the matchup, and this one was an easy pick for me, if I'm being honest. Even though I noticed that Wetzell does train over at altitude, at team elevation, with the likes of Corey Sandhagen, Chepe Mariscal, and Rafa Garcia. I did notice in some of the tape study that Corey Sandhagen does tend to corner Wetzell very often. You have to believe that he's focusing a lot on his wrestling for this particular matchup against Kasumov, because Kasumov is heavy grappling, wrestling, grinding style, what we tend to see from the Russians. He's not Dagestani, but he does implement that kind of style. On the feet, keeps pretty technical in terms of snappy kicks and respectable striking, but ultimately he looks to try to get you into the clinch or body locks up against the fence and grind on you. And to be honest with you, I didn't see enough from Wetzell in his tape study to be able to really kind of give a good enough reason to pick him. So I am going to go with the Russian here. I think it's going to be your typical boring decision, grind him up against the fence, ground and pound. Kasumov does actually have some pretty nice front chokes and darces and guillotines, so do keep an eye out for those if Justin does end up sort of putting his neck out there. And also as well, Justin hasn't really fought the highest level of competition. A lot of the wins that he's had tend to be over, people that you kind of expect a 13-3 fighter to beat. So slow and unathletic as well. And I just think this is a bad matchup for him. I feel fairly confident in the Russian here to get it done. Definitely a parlay piece to bet on the Russian this week. I would say the fight probably goes to a decision or at least a little bit longer as well. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
I also with Kasumov in this one. Although Wetzell, he's pretty decent on his feet when he's stand-up fighting. I feel Kasumov will be able to get this to the ground. Wetzell, he's pretty well versed, and you mentioned the people that he's trained with, so you know that he knows what he's doing on the ground as well. And if you've watched the fight between Kasumov versus I think it's Charles Enrique, he had a hard time taking that guy to the ground, and he struggled getting up off his back. And the reason being is because Enrique was a much larger grappler. He was not able to control him against the cage. And on top, the top pressure was too much for him to create space. I don't think he's going to have that kind of problem here with Justin Wetzell. I feel he won't have that issue. He'll be able to control him, probably end up turning Wetzell into a pretzel.
Glamorous. Love that. I love that. And I just want to say as well, how do you follow that up, ladies and gentlemen? If that's not work, a like and subscribe. I don't know what is. I just wanted to add as well, if Justin is training at elevation, you have to believe that the grinding style of Kasum is probably going to be, wearing, very taxing. You might see a late third round flurry from Justin. The fact that his cardio might be the better out of the two and the wrestling might take its toll on Kasum's cardio. But ultimately, I do believe that he gets it done here. But it's just something to look out for in the matchup itself. And next up, we have Mando Gutierrez taking on Francesco Nuzzi, and this one's a pretty straightforward one for me, man. I was fairly impressed with Nuzzi. I believe he fights over in the PFL Europe, so not necessarily somebody that's a more well-known quantity in the PFL. And I like him. He's an aggressive striker, but he likes to stay composed. And the thing I really noticed after watching multiple fights of his, he's got a really nice, snappy high kick, really, really nice head kick. He's able to knock out one of his last opponents with it. He stays fairly, composed. And one of the things that I really like to hear from him as well, which I noticed one of the commentary teams said, was he's actually taken the time to go over to the States to train with Team Alpha Male and Syndicate MMA. So he goes over there, he pays for a couple of weeks to go out there and train, which I really like. So he's getting different looks, training with, the higher level guys that are over there in the States, which is something I really like to hear from guys in Europe who might not necessarily have the higher level competition to train with. So that tells me he takes his career very seriously. And when I noticed Gutierrez here, I got to admit, I watched his fight on Contender Series against Raul Rojas Jr., and I just wasn't not only impressed with him in that fight, but in other fights. He just tends to come out wild. He looks for takedowns, which I don't think he'll get here against Francisco. And to me, he has very, very poor fight IQ. He looks to try to take the back of his opponent. He tends to struggle and kind of fall off and lose momentum in fights. And I don't even think he's going to be able to get Francisco down. I think that he's worlds above in terms of the striking, Francisco. I think that's going to be all she wrote. I feel fairly confident in him and putting him in the confident parlay this week. And to be honest with you, Gutierrez just didn't stand out to me as a fighter that I think is going to have success in this matchup. His striking defense is poor. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but like I said, pretty confident pick here for Francisco. I feel pretty good about him. I think the Italian gets it done. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
Very interesting again, because I went with Nuzzi as well. Like I said, Mando Gutierrez, I watched the fight that you were speaking of, and I've seen a lot of his other ones on the regional scene. He's a guy that kind of gets in grappling exchanges, doesn't really have a lot of firepower on the feet, but he does get into some exchanges. But on the regional scene, he tends to have a lot better success with that. But when he's gone up against guys that are just slightly higher level, he has an issue. Francisco Nuzzi, what impressed me is he's got sharp movements on his feet, sharp strikes, even his ground game. He's his economy of movement is pretty good off of his back, but doesn't spend a lot of time there. He has very good takedown defense. Something that stood out to me was, although it was about 3, maybe 4 years ago, something like that, he fought Bernardo Sopai, and he was able to get the victory over him. And Sopai's not very much a joke. So I think he's very highly skilled. So I went with that as well. That's what actually put me over the top.
Oh, I did not notice that. It's good research there. See, that's why we pay him the big bucks, ladies and gentlemen. I did not notice that, but that's a good win against Sopai. Sopai's had good success so far in the UFC. And I did notice as well on tape that Nuzzi, he has a fantastic sprawl. So I think Gutierrez in this matchup, I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to get this fight to the ground. And he does leave a lot of openings. So I'm expecting a knockout, if I'm being honest. So this might be one to watch for if you're a lover of the knockout. So definitely confident in Francisco in this matchup. And that brings us to the co-main event. We have Liz Carmouche taking on Lara Joanna. And I've been a big fan of Liz Carmouche over the years. She is 41 years old, which for MMA is almost unheard of in terms of having success. But she keeps doing it, man. A savvy veteran, somebody that's always tough and always live in fights. And she showed that in her last fight when she had a kind of a Hail Mary submission in her third round win over, I believe it was Watanabe. But she was being controlled in the wrestling from Watanabe in that fight. And she was able to pull off the Hail Mary submission. I believe it was the armbar. But very, very impressive in the clinch. She has respectable striking, decent power for her age and for her size at 125. The thing that I really, really notice as well about her is the fact that even though she's 41 years old and kind of been around the block, she still comes out very aggressive. She always looks for the finish. It's not like she's trying to, kind of grind her way to a decision and things like that. She is always looking for a finish, which I really like. And to be perfectly honest with you, when I saw Joanna kickboxing style, she likes to end combinations with kicks, and she does train over there, I believe, with the Pitbull brothers, but how much she's training there, I'm not too sure. It does say she moves around in terms of gym. Her grappling is, as Khabib would say, your grappling is zero, and She's been submitted, I believe it's 3 times out of her 9 losses. So, and she's been finished in 5 of her 9 losses. And I think that's what's going to lean me here to Liz Carmouche to get it done. I'm going to go with the savvy veteran. I think she might be able to pull off a submission here. And I think if she's smart, I think she just tries to get the takedown. I think that she gets the fight to the ground and she pulls off the submission. I think that's the easiest path to victory here for her. I believe Jenna Bishop did that exact thing to her. And Liz Carmouche, even though she doesn't have the BJJ of Jenna Bishop, she definitely can take the back and find the choke and is dangerous off the ground. So I think that's definitely where she looks to get this fight. I think she gets the submission here. If it stays on the feet, I do think that it could be, a little bit more of a tricky matchup for her. But ultimately, I think she gets the takedown. I think that Liz gets the fight, least path to victory. She gets the submission. Confident pick for Liz here. Who do you have in this matchup, Carlos?
I also went with Liz Carmouche. Like you said, I understand that Carmouche is 41. Joanne is young. She's, on the rise somewhat, not really streaking, but on the rise. But Carmouche has dealt with fighters like this in the past. She's fought high pressure like Lima Lee McFarland or Marlos Kunin, back in the day, way back in the day. And the only thing that is a factor in this fight is Father Time. And, Carmouche relies on strength for her grappling and her cardio is always on point. So I don't really see that to be an issue because, if power is the last thing to go, her strength is going to be just fine. Joanne needs to keep this on the feet. I don't really see that happening. Even if she stings like, Carmouche on the way in, I don't think she's got enough pop to just get it done with one shot.
Yeah.
Also she's got to keep Carmouche from getting close in the clinch and getting her up against the cage. And I don't see her being able to do that. Carmouche has been known to smother almost anybody whenever and however she wants to. And I don't think there's a good path to victory for Joanne. So Carmouche, let's get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to think at 41 years of age that she would like to win that $1 million and kind of retire on top. So I don't think that she's going to be, mixing it up on the feet with somebody that can definitely strike. I think that she's going to look to play to her wheelhouse, play to her strengths, and 2 confident picks, I believe, here for Liz Carmouche. And that brings us to the main event. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. If you guys are enjoying the PFL content, it's something that we look to do here on the GroundNPound Podcast every single week. And that brings us to the main event. We have Josh Rettinghouse taking on Leandro Higo. And I'm going to pass this one to Carlos. Who do you have in this main event?
In this one, I took Leandro Higo. Rettinghouse is well versed, everywhere pretty much. He's a veteran of the game. He knows the ground very well. He knows the stand-up very well. He's got very good defense on the feet. So I don't see him getting hurt often, but I do see that Leandro Higo does have a little bit of a speed advantage over him, and I think he does bring the bigger pop. I also think that in the grappling aspect, I think Higo's actually got the edge there as well. Rettinghouse, he can finish it anyway. He can finish the fight anywhere. The problem is sometimes he's so defensively safe, he doesn't really try to attack. And Leandro's always been known to be aggressive. And I just believe, the power, the speed, the ground advantage, I'm going to give it to Higo. So wherever this goes, I see him having the advantage. Rettinghouse did have a very good showing on The Ultimate Fighter when he was there. He's not a chump, and he's been doing this for a while. He's got a lot of fights. I think that Higo gets it done. I think it's going to be a tough matchup. I think Rettinghouse is going to surprise him with a couple things that he's never seen. And ultimately, I wish I could feel very confident in this, but I don't. But I'm taking Leandro Higo.
Yeah. 2 picks here as well for Leandro Higo. I'm going to go with Higo. But I will say I was impressed with Rettinghouse. Technical striker as well. Nice kicks. The thing that really kind of put me off, though, is whenever I see him take on a named opponent that is kind of established in MMA, one that people were really familiar with, he tends to lose to those individuals. People like Marlon Moraes, for example, he lost that matchup. And the thing that I noticed as well is on his record, 3 of his 5 losses coming by way of submission. And Leandro Higo trains with the Pitbull brothers, so you have to think he's going to come in here, maybe look to get the grappling going, look for takedowns and establish top control. Look for that submission. I think that's his best wheelhouse in order to get this fight done and away from the judges. I think that's the best way. I wouldn't be surprised if Rettinghouse is able to keep it on the feet, though, and have success on the feet. I don't think that Higo should be a huge favorite in this matchup. He is aggressive, like Carlos said, but I have seen him get touched a few times. He can be a little bit wild, a little bit reckless. He likes to throw spinning attacks and knees in the clinch, so he does leave himself susceptible. He likes to kind of mix things up and leave himself vulnerable, so Rittenhouse, as a savvy vet, might be able to capitalize, but ultimately, Leandro Higo only tends to lose to established names, people like Aaron Pico, Daniel Sabatello, guys that can, mix in wrestling. And I think in this matchup, I think that's exactly what Higo is going to do. I think he's going to get the takedown and maybe look for the submission. So 2 confident picks here from the Ground and Pound podcast for Leandro Higo in the main event on Bellator Round 1 tournament. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button, people. I like to show you guys what's coming on the Ground and Pound podcast. And coming soon, if you haven't seen it already, you don't want to miss it. The full card breakdown for UFC 313, Volkanovski taking on Diego Lopez. And we'll see if Lopez can beat Anu or if Volkanovski can retain his belt. But that video comes out every Wednesday. So tomorrow, keep an eye out for that. And every Friday, UFC 314 best bets. If you're interested in putting some money in your pockets, I recommend that video. We go over there, and we talk about all of the best bets for UFC 314. This week, we're going to hopefully keep the momentum rolling. We were profitable the last 2 weeks. We're going to try and keep the underdog lock of the week going. The dog of the week is currently on a nice streak as well. So keep an eye out for that video on Friday. And before I wrap things up, Carlos, is there anything that you'd like to say to the people before we wrap things up?
Only thing I can say is what you've already said. Please like and subscribe. We enjoy doing this for you guys. We'd love to get more PFL action in here, and I'm going to try to do the best I can to get on these videos as well and give you my input.
Yep. And like Carlos mentioned as well, obviously a lot of people are not familiar with the PFL. So if you are new or long-term fans of the PFL, you know how a lot of people don't like to cover it. Well, we got you covered here on the Ground and Pound podcast. So hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy the content, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.